Welcome back to our epic series of episodes with Rhonda Britten, who has this astounding story about growing up in the Midwest in an abusive family. She didn't really realize how abusive it was until later introspection kind of made that known. She witnessed the murder of her mother at the hand of her father, who then committed suicide. I mean, you want to talk about trauma? It's not a competition, but hard to think of something worse than that.
Yeah.
And then, Rhonda, you shared this story about alcoholism, DUIs, jail. You're living in LA. You're an actress.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Not
That's
driving, your car's gone. Just, it's a dumpster fire.
Pretty much. I like that.
It's pretty,
I like that.
I hate to say it, but yeah.
It is.
And we've talked about getting back on your feet, having difficulty even saying the word God. We're talking about rituals of forgiveness. We're talking about Alcoholics Anonymous, which seems like it really, really helped. We talked, you mentioned you got married. I'd love to hear more about that. But this is the episode titled Thrive. Let's let it rip. And you have huge accomplishments I can't wait to get into. We're talking about television shows. We're talking about best-selling books. We're talking about repeated visits with Oprah. I've been invited a lot of places with the media, but occasionally I get invited back. So to have Oprah invite you back, that's great stuff.
I'm with you, Randy.
Yeah. Where do you want to start, Rhonda?
Rhonda,
I think I'll start with the. I think the story starts with. So we ended the last episode with me forgiving my parents on the 20th anniversary of their death. So now I'm 34 years old, right? And it's June. And during this period of time, I am working public relations. And I was working public relations for somebody else. I had left acting. I had realized that as I got sober that I didn't want to be an actress, which was mind-blowing and heartbreaking. And that's a whole other just devastating time in my life. During that time, I also discovered that I was infertile. So that was another devastating time in my life. So here I am, infertile, not an actress, trying to figure out what my next step is. And so I'm working for a PR company and she asked me to be a partner. And I realized if she asked me to be a partner, then I can do my own thing. So I opened my own business and I, work with solo entrepreneurs, right? And one of my clients was one of the very first life coaches in the world. And he used to work with, high achieving individuals in Los Angeles and companies. And I helped him with PR. Well, I don't know how I knew how to do this. I really don't know how I knew how to do this. But I eventually ended up like running his business and creating his workshops and just doing all this stuff for him. And he would always tell me, you're going to be a better life coach than me. And I'd be like, don't think so. Now, remember, during this time, I also graduated as a spiritual practitioner. So I actually had, a 4-year spiritual degree, so to speak. I was also in ministerial school, right? So, there was reasons why somebody might think I'm a life coach. And he'd always say to me, you're going to be a better life coach than me. And I'd be like, no, because I'm too screwed up. Thank you so much. Remember, because this was so still alive for me. Like I was an alcoholic. I had you can't, nobody wants to go, oh, let's go for Rhonda for advice. Like, oh, that's a good idea. Like, what are you, crazy? Right. So that was not a good idea to my mind. So he would say that to me and I'd always blow him off. And one day we were in his office and he was at the whiteboard and, I'm sitting on the couch and he's talking, we're brainstorming something. And all of a sudden, on the right of the ceiling, top of the ceiling, a cloud comes out, a book comes out, opens up and goes, shuts and goes back in the cloud. And I'm like this.
What just happened?
That just happened. I look at Paul because I think, well, that's clearly because I heard when that happened, I was downloaded lots of stuff. And I was like, that clearly wasn't meant for me. So I looked at Paul and he was like, and so I looked behind me, even though we were the only ones. I literally looked behind me and I'm like, well, that must be for somebody else. But I got it for me. And I realized There was nobody else, and Paul was talking, and he literally had no idea that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Thank the Lord Jesus that I had an appointment with my minister the next day. And I went in there and I go, okay, so the sky opened up, this book came out, and gave me every answer to any question I'd ever asked in my entire life. I knew every answer to any question I'd ever asked and more. And inside that message, God basically said, and now you must go and teach this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no. Did you forget about the alcoholism, the suicide attempts, the US? And my minister says I go, there's no way I can do that. Nobody's going to listen to me. I go, I have 3 college degrees left. You know, I have to go back and finish my 3 credits for college to get my bachelor's. And then I can go get my master's. Then I can go get my PhD. Then I can write a book. So in about 7 years, I'll do this. And my minister goes,
no,
you've got the call.
Yeah.
You're ready to answer it. And I go, no, you don't understand. I have to go get my bachelor's, get my master's, get my PhD, write a book. And then she goes, no, you got the call. You're ready now. And I go, I'm not ready. She goes, you're ready. You wouldn't have got the call if you weren't ready. And I was like, you're a crazy person, you know, because I just like couldn't wrap my head around it. And it took me a few months for me to integrate that, believe I even had a right to even contemplate that. And then I became Paul, who was my client. I became his first mentee, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And I was trying to get, actually, one of my very, very first client I ever had is actually still my client. And so we were talking about this the other day because I thought I asked her to be my client. She goes, no, Rhonda, because I was trying to get her into Paul's classes. And she said, well, why don't you coach me? And I was like, I can't coach you. I'm not ready to coach you. And she goes, yeah, you can. You just go ahead and coach me. And so she became my guinea pig. And I always say I would not have Fearless Living without Lisa, because Lisa was the one that made me start coaching her. And so then I'd coach Lisa. I'd run back to Paul and go, what do I, she said this, I said this, what do I do? And then he'd tell me what to do. I go back. And that lasted for about 6 months. And then eventually I was like, I know what to say.
Yeah.
I know exactly what to say.
You used your trauma. Yeah.
I used the download God gave me and everything.
Yeah.
I knew what to say.
It's all the big guy upstairs. Absolutely.
So I started with one client, and then I got a second client. Remember, this is the early days. There's only 5 coaches. There's no coaching federation. There's no coaching industry, So started getting little clients, and then I had 2 clients for the first 6 months. And at the 6-month mark, I was like, God, I got one more clients. And I figured out how to say and what to do. And within a week I had 20 clients. And so from there, I started Lisa, that darn client of mine asked me to come to her business to teach her employees. And I again said, I notice a theme here. I always say no first. I go, no, I can't do that. I just do private coaching. No. And she again talked me into it. I was like, okay, but I'm only doing this one time. And then I started teaching, and I was an actress, and all of a sudden, I've got 4 people. It's only 4 people, but at 4 people. And I was like, oh my God, I like this. And so then I started teaching workshops and then speaking. And then all my students I started having 10-week classes and things like that. And then my classes kept asking me for a book. And I was like, I'm going to write a book. And so then I wrote a book. And then that was the beginning. When I got my book published, I had a 4-day auction. I got the highest advance at that time for a first-time author, an unknown author. Remember, there's no internet.
What's the name of your book?
It's Fearless Living.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's
you haven't mentioned it. So let's talk about that.
Fearless Living. So that Fearless Living was the beginning of, then I went on a 30-some city tour. They sent me to England, Ireland, Australia, sent me all over the world for this book tour. And when I was in England, they were producing. They were just about to produce, starting looking for somebody to cast as the first life coach ever in the world to be on a reality television show. And my publicist was like, well, they called to see if you'd be willing to screen test. Would you be willing? And I'm like, sure, why not? And so the joke of the century is, when I was an actress, all I did was pray for a series. God, give me a series, God. And then I quit acting because I realized I didn't want to be an actress anymore. I wanted to be myself. I didn't know who I was. I wanted to be me. So the most ironic thing, of course, is here I am in London auditioning for a show, TV show, to be myself. So I auditioned. 3 weeks later, I was living in London, and I was doing the very first reality show of its kind in the world, and being the first life coach on TV. So
and
I did that.
What was the name of that show? Because
it was called Help Me Rhonda.
Yes.
Help Me Rhonda.
Because I watched it.
Yeah, Help Me Rhonda. And then I came back to the States. Every season I would come back. And at the end of second season, Starting Over was casting. And so Starting Over was the first reality show.
Also, oh my goodness, yeah.
So Starting Over was the first reality show in America ever. Mm-hmm. And I went to callbacks. I didn't go to the other, I just went to the end. And I remember them telling me, it's going to be like this, it's going to be like that. And I'm like, not so much. I've been doing it for 2 years. I'm actually the only person in this room that's actually done it. And this is the way it's going down. So I didn't know if they were going to hire me or not, but they did. So then during that time of the second season of Help Me Rhonda and the first season of Starting Over, my second book was published, Fearless Loving. And then I went on to write Change Your Life in 30 Days while I was shooting 165 episodes a year for Starting Over. It was on NBC every day at noon. That's where I won my Emmy. And then I published my fourth book, Do I Look Fat in This? Right after I shot Starting Over, completed Starting Over the 3 seasons. And then after I did Do I Look Fat in This, then I did my third television show, Celebrity Fit Club.
Okay, but you totally like spoke under the radar with the Emmy with Starting Over. It's like,
yeah,
what? You won an Emmy for Starting Over? Like, share that with us. I know, yeah.
The great thing is that changing lives on TV. I remember what you see now on reality television is not what I did.
Yeah.
I actually changed their lives. Right? And it was not scripted. Nothing was scripted. I did what I did. They would ask me, well, Rhonda, what do you want to do with this person? I remember when I did Help Me Rhonda for the first season, the production company sat me down and was like, okay, so these are the 3 people we've cast. Now, what are we going to do with them over the 4-week time? Because it was a Change Your Life in 30 Day show. And I said, I don't know. I only know what I'm going to do right away. They're like, what? I go, no, I have to work with them and then see what I'm going to do. So they literally were like, are you kidding me? And I'm like, that's the way I roll. So I would work with all 3 people the first week. And then after every time I work with them, I would say, okay, now I want to do this. And that's what I did with Starting Over. So Starting Over, we had 6 women in a house and changed their lives. And, so every episode, I literally changed their lives. So you might only see 5 minutes, but I might have been coaching them for 3 hours.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, Rhonda, this kind of came out like shortly after Nicole's murder. And I watched that show and I was like, yeah, and I can get tears in my eyes, but that's where I learned about you. And then Fearless Living through Denise. So even though we're, connected now over the past, 10 years, but 28 years ago, you grabbed my heartstrings because what you did and what you're continuing to do, but what you did for the people who came into the house, I wanted. It
was good.
Yeah. And I know, I wanted to be you. I really did. I wanted to be you because what you offered the gals that came in, the women who came into the home, Starting Over, people don't know today's generation. They don't know Starting Over. They don't know it. But I remember after Nicole was killed, watching this show, and I'm like, oh my God, I want to be, it's like, yeah, I idolized you.
Thank you, Tanya. I appreciate that.
I did. I idolized you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I really do believe that, I don't want to say single-handedly grew the coaching industry, but since I was the face of coaching on TV for 600 episodes, 3 television shows, 6 years total.
It was huge.
I really believe that I brought coaching into the forefront in our homes because you saw me coaching, right? You saw me coaching, you saw me change lives. So then people, I think a lot of people, like you, Tanya, were like, well, I want to do that. I want to do what she's doing. Yes. And so I had started the Fearless Living Institute
I was 25.
20 years ago, just 20 years ago.
Yeah. I was 25.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So there you go. So I did all those episodes and changed those lives, and it was a pleasure, and I'm glad I got to do it. It was a complete joy.
So Randy, that's how I know Rhonda. Rhonda has had like a personal impact in my life.
Oh yeah, I get it. Yeah. I see that. Yeah. Rhonda, tell us more about the Fearless Living Institute itself. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks. When I first started coaching, I knew my whole goal was to have things for anybody's time or money. So if you had a little money and more time, I had things for you. And if you had a lot of money and a little time, I had things for you. Mm-hmm. And what it's evolved over the years, it's still basically the same principles. I still teach Fearless Living as the heart of Fearless Living. And basically, it's about all the work on how I changed my life. And I created a program. And I also created, I can say it to you guys, God gave me what I call the wheel methodology. It's the wheel of fear and wheel of freedom. So people understand how fear works. So I like to say I do two things better than anybody else in the world. One of them is helping people master fear and identifying what their core fear is and helping them move from their wheel of fear to their wheel of freedom. I do that better than anybody else. It's my work. It's God's work through me. And I believe I've created something so unique that literally nobody else does it. So that's what I do for people, everyday people, from any walk of life. I don't care if you're an executive or a stay-at-home mom or a bus driver, or, I've had doctors, I've had lawyers, again, whatever that is. If you are anywhere feeling like there is more for you to achieve, or you have that negative self-talk, or you feel like what's wrong with me, you will not feel that way anymore after Fearless Living. The second thing that I do is, and I do that through my, a membership program called Fearless U, Y-O-U, Fearless U. So Fearless U is got all my work in it. I teach in it every month. I have faculty members. We love on you. We have coaches. We just love you up. The second thing that I do is I train coaches, and I'm pretty fanatical about coach training. So I believe, and I haven't been disputed at this point, the most rigorous coaching program out there. We're the only coaching program that requires supervision. We're the only coaching program that requires mentorship. We do things. We're the only coaching program that actually has a skill-based curriculum, the art and science of coaching. So we have created something that really, for those people that want to be a coach and not go to a weekend class and call themselves a coach, but actually learn the coaching skills that are needed and necessary to be successful, then we're the place to come. So we've had therapists come. We've had researchers come, we've had ministers come. We've been very fortunate. And, I love training coaches. I love creating that place for people to, become another version of me in the sense of who they are. I become their better self. And then I love helping every single human being on the planet to become as fearless as possible, to live live the life their soul intended. That's my motto.
You are the perfect example.
Well, I've heard your program is described as the Ivy League of coaching. Mm-hmm. And I got to ask you the question, Oprah, what was that like, sitting down with Oprah and talking about all this?
It was different. It was different every time I've been on. I'll talk about let me talk about the first time and the last time. The first time I was on, and I've got a little bug here just trying to get in front of my thing. So if you see me going like this, I'm trying to grab this little bug in front of me. Or it's a big bug, actually.
I work in the world of mental health. Like,
here I am just going, what's going on? I don't know what's happening.
There's no shock.
The first time I went on, it was to share my story. She had me on to share my secret. And because I considered my parents' murder-suicide the biggest secret in the world. By this time, people could talk about being raped, or they could talk about abuse, but nobody, I mean, when I said my father killed my mother and killed himself, everyone went like, okay, so I'll see you later. It was literally never talked about. So that's when I went on the first time, was to talk about my story and to break the shame and break the secret of murder-suicide.
Stigma.
The very last time I went on, I'm going to share what I did is because by this time now I'd been coaching for 20 years. I'd been, written 4 books. I'd done a lot of TV. And I remember going on there saying to myself, my intention while I am filming this episode is to be equal to Oprah. That she's not better than me, smarter than me. She's my equal. So that is the intention I walked in with the entire before, during, and after that filming of that last episode.
Yeah.
Wow. Rhonda, tell me if you agree with me or not. But I have been preaching for years now that unresolved trauma, particularly childhood trauma, is the world's number one problem. It's not alcohol. It's not drugs. It's not workaholism. It's not domestic violence. At the core is unresolved trauma. Mm-hmm. Do you agree with that or not?
I do, because, that's the thing, people, like even in Fearless Living, when you work in Fearless Living, you're no longer working on the symptoms, right? You're no longer working on the things that show up. Like procrastination is a symptom of fear. Mm-hmm. It's not, procrastination isn't the problem. Worry isn't the problem. It's a symptom of fear. Comparing, being perfectionist, it's just a symptom of fear. So once you understand fear, those things naturally fade away. So yeah, I look at the world today. We could talk about anything, any politician, any artist, any, just name anybody. And people living out of integrity, right? People living out of integrity. And it's like, why can't they speak the truth? Because they are afraid of what's going to happen. Well, why are they afraid? Because like you said, Randy, I bet you there's trauma in the past. I bet there's something that you were denied, ignored, abused. Again, we all know that trauma is not necessarily somebody hitting you. It's a dirty look. It's a dirty look. It's somebody saying you can't do something. It's going to the dentist. There's so many ways that trauma unfolds. Yeah. So, we have to get in touch with our bodies. As we all know, the 3 of us here, we know that trauma lives in our bodies as well as and shows up everywhere else. But people aren't comfortable with their body sensations. They take it as truth, right? They take it as, I'm getting a stomach ache, therefore I shouldn't go and make that dream happen. It's like, no, you're having a stomach ache because you're having a trauma response and you're having physical sensations. So let's move through that so that you are freed from that.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Triggers, trauma, it can show up in a variety of ways where, trauma triggers, grief, it's immeasurable. Like you can't measure it. Like, okay, somebody lost
it's a constant unfolding, like I say.
Exactly.
My thing is that I love to unfold the soul, right? And so, but it is an unfoldment. Even me today, I just went through a dark night a few years ago, and that dark night was another unfoldment of the trauma of my father. Mm-hmm. And, so it's not that it, you have a different relationship with it. And again, some parts of it are able to be healed and moved through. But there are other parts that are going to continue to say, hi, I'm back to help you grow again. I'm here to help you grow again. Don't drink that alcohol. Come on, we're going to do this together.
We're going to work it. Yeah. And so this is like the whole, concept of, post-traumatic thriving, where it's like, okay, let's share the stories, the experiences, but also, share the resources, right? So, right, where it's like, okay, right, everything is immeasurable. Can't measure it.
Well, yeah, and Rhonda, I could honestly talk to you for days, but I'm so grateful for the time you've spent with us.
Thank you.
Obviously your books and the Fearless Living Institute are fantastic resources. We want to applaud that and share that with everybody watching us now. Let me ask you maybe the wrap-up question, and there's, like I say, we could talk for days, and maybe if you're willing, we could talk more down the road. But I saw a statistic once that 86 to 95% of everyone by college age has suffered through a trauma, and you went through layered trauma. Layered trauma. And I noticed that as you were talking, Tanya teared up a little bit ago, realizing when she was going through her trauma with the whole loss of her sister through a horrific murder. She was watching you on TV. What goes through your heart, and more importantly, your head and your heart as you hear Tanya kind of representing, I'm sure, millions of people you've helped? How does that feel in terms of when you hear something feedback like that?
I am completely humbled and honored. You know, I'm just. I just put my feet in front of the other and say, okay, God, what next? So I do believe that, you know, it helps me to believe, whether it's true or not, we'll never know until we're on the other side, but it helps me to believe that my mother did not live in vain. You know, your sister didn't die in vain, right? Like, my mother didn't die in vain because I'm sitting here talking to you right now.
Exactly.
And so that gives me, you know, people go, why do you do what you do? I go, well, from a psychological point, I'll tell you, I'm always saving my mother. If you want to get to the, psychoanalyze me, every client is my mother. Right. And so it's like, but, I get to, my mother died at 39 years old. She was divorcing my father. She was about to step out on her own, and instead it was cut short. And it took me 20 years to realize that same thing didn't have to happen to me. And I had to be willing to step out, and it may happen to me, but I had to be willing to step out in order to see.
Yeah.
So I am deeply humbled by Tanya. So thank you.
Yeah. And Tanya is just the face we happen to be seeing that represents many, many others. So for that, I just want to say thanks.
So grateful.
Yeah.
So grateful.
So if you haven't read Fearless Living, do it. If you don't know about the Fearless Living Institute, go there.
And reach out to Rhonda.
Fearlessliving.org, fearlessliving.org. Just go on over there.
Yeah.
And you are so personable. That's the thing that I love about you, where it's like you don't have, you may have people who organize stuff, right? Event planning. But if I wanted to reach out to you, I text you and you answered. And that speaks volumes. It does. You're very approachable. And I hope that we can kind of, spread the word of being, be approachable to people, because we need that today.
Yeah.
We do.
Yeah. We're all humans. We're all humans just trying to get through, right? I don't care how evolved you are. I do not believe that there's a human being alive that doesn't have fear, right? I believe the Dalai Lama has them. I believe, right, Eckhart Tolle, everybody. I don't care who you are. And so, we're all just doing our best through the trying to move into a place of freedom. And so I think it's E. Cummings, and I'm going to butcher the quote, but it was like, I remember reading that as a young girl, 10, 12 years old. It was my favorite quote, and I'm going to butcher it, which is so sad, but it's like, to be yourself in this world is the hardest fight you will ever have, and you will keep on fighting. And I think that's true in our world. I think it's to be yourself, to live the life, as I say, your soul intended, is not only the greatest gift that you give to yourself and everyone around you, but it's the greatest gift you give to the world. And that's why you're here. That's why you are an angel up in heaven doing what I did with my mom and dad. And that spark of life inside of you is meant for you, and you are meant to live it. So I am deeply passionate about it. Even 26 years later now, I am deeply passionate about it.
Well, I hope people reach out to you, because you have been an inspiration to me, and hence the reason that I brought you on here, and I'm so grateful. And I know your story, your message of, hope and everything, your, fearless living. I know everything is, going to come, it's going to reach out to someone. I'm so grateful.
Well, there's nothing wrong with you.
Like cheering up.
I always say, to my clients, to anybody who will listen, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just fear. And once you can do that, you can start moving through that trauma. You can start moving through and not be afraid to, I was afraid to get angry, but you have to be willing to move through it to get to the other side.
And you also need to be angry. Angry is a very healthy emotion. People don't realize that anger is a healthy emotion. It's just how you release it.
It's more than healthy. It's essential.
That's right.
You know,
That's
just
very
don't
essential.
hurt yourself. Don't hurt someone else.
That's
But
right.
There's a chapter in my book. It's if you're pissed, be pissed.
Yes,
You
Be
know,
pissed.
you
Yeah,
know.
be pissed.
Yeah, that's part of the process.
Yeah.
So, Rhonda, we could go on for days.
so much.
Thank
I
you
know.
so
My
much.
God. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, that's what we do here at Post Traumatic Thriving. No better example of, you know, the dive, survive, or thrive. Thank you, Rhonda.
Thank you very much. Be fearless, everyone. Thanks.
Yeah. See you next time.
Thanks for supporting our podcast. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and follow us on your favorite social media. For books, merchandise, or to donate, visit CoreIQ.com. Post-Traumatic Thriving is produced by CoreIQ, a nonprofit with a mission to teach the life skills we all need but are not taught in school. CoreIQ and the Post-Traumatic Thriving podcast are for informational purposes only and do not provide medical or mental health advice. Always consult with your licensed medical and mental health care providers.